Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode at the Warehouse Underground podcast series. This is episode number 9. I'm Ben, the host of the show, and joining me today is Matt Vito of LIFTEX Roof Lifting and Rob Marek of Raise the Roof Logistics. Now, let me lay out a scenario for you. If you go around the country and you talk to warehouse leaders at all types of facilities, big, small, you name it, I would say 7 out of 10 of them will complain that they are running out of space, or at some point they've been space constrained. And when that happens, that puts a huge burden on you as an operator. It never fails. You walk through your facility, every rack is full. You've got pallets worth of goods in the rack, in the aisle, and somebody always comes up to you and says, "Hey, you have to come up with a plan for unloading all these trucks." To which the warehouse manager says, "Where do you want me to put it? What do you want me to raise the roof?" Well, the good thing is my 2 guests on the show today can probably help with that. So I'm very excited to have these 2 on the show. I have a lot of questions for them because what they do is really cool and really unique and an option for a lot of people out there to solve some problems and some pain points for them that they may not know exists. So with that, I'll bring these 2 on the stage. Matt, Rob, welcome to the Warehouse Underground, guys. Thank you for coming on. And how are you?
Doing well, Ben. Thanks for having us on. Really appreciate it.
Nice to be here.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. So before we get too much into the show, and I talked a little bit about it in the intro, but what is your background? How did you come to be where you are today at these 2 companies? And what are they all about? What exactly are you doing?
I guess I'll start with that one. Just talk about LIFTEX roof lifting first. So yeah, we raise the roof, literally. And we've been doing it longer than you might think. Actually, it originated in the 80s. Started off as easy riser roof raising, switched it up. Now we're on LIFTEX roof lifting. We invented the technology. We're the first ones to do it. And now we're growing at rapid rates. It's not just the hobby, like where to start. Now we're doing it in all kinds of scenarios. Warehousing is obviously our bread and butter. As far as my background,
Go ahead.
As far as my background, how I came to be here, I'm an NJIT grad. Went to school for engineering. My role is technically as a project manager. But I work with our clients. I'm like a technical liaison. I work in and with both our structural engineers and our construction teams.
Cool. And so we're talking about actual physical raising of the roof of facilities. And so just so the audience has an idea here, I actually have a visual aid. So I'll bring this up so that they can get an idea of what we're talking about. So if this I pulled directly from your website, which I thought was really cool. Like the roofs are literally being raised up in the air to accommodate for more space. And so I know that I probably speak for a lot of warehouse managers or leaders that are out there when I say that we just did not ever really know that this was a possible solution for facilities out there. So the fact that that is there, I find that really cool. I think that's really neat.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you this. So I can think of a lot of reasons, and I kind of mentioned one in the intro about why facilities or why operations would want to raise the roof. But what are you seeing now? I mentioned the one with space. Is that the primary thing that people are coming to you to say that they want a problem for, or are there other things too? What are customers saying to you when they approach you?
No, that's definitely the main reason. It's all about increasing compute. That might be a good segue though to Rob. You want to touch on this?
Yeah. So, 80-20 rule, most of the people that interface with us are talking about increasing cubic capacity in buildings, warehouse space, pallet storage, and things like that. We've got lots of other clients who call us for all sorts of reasons: athletics, manufacturing, retail uses, but those would typically be confined to the other 20% of what we're doing. but the main directive is warehouse height.
Yeah. And I mean, I could see a situation where in the warehouse world, warehouse or distribution center, where yes, obviously, if my current facility is running out of space and I want to have some sort of solution to that that does not involve me purchasing another building, which in today's world, the price per square footage of warehouse space is very high. So that may be a better solution. But two, sometimes you may see a situation where I'm not in my current building, but I have another building that I'm looking at. We like it, but the roof is too low because we have all this new technology that we want to go in there. Like we have plans for a pick module that's two or three levels high, maybe 4 levels high, and the current roof is just not going to do that. So I think that's something to think about. It's not just necessarily my own current facility where I could see this being a solution. I think it could be one where I'm growing into one as well, because that does happen.
It's both.
Yeah.
We certainly see both, and both scenarios you describe have advantages and disadvantages and reasons why we see people calling us. In the current real estate climate, especially in the areas that are totally built out, I'm getting a lot of phone calls from people every single day that are sitting on no ability to find a place to expand into. There's no available real estate for somebody to go buy, but they want to do exactly what you described. They want to buy the real estate above their building because they say, look, if I could only store 3 or 4 levels higher, I'd solve all my problems right here. I wouldn't have to go deal with a real estate transaction. I wouldn't have to go do any of these other things. All I would have to do is live through the disruption of a construction project. And so we have to deal with the pros and cons of that, working in an occupied building and all of those situations. But historically, more of our projects have been real estate transactions because it is usually easier to do this as part of, we're growing into a new building. We want to do this as part of our expansion. And while we're moving into this building, let's increase the cubic capacity, because instead of it being 18 feet tall, let's make it 32 feet tall, something like that. So it's both. We've seen both.
Yeah. And sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No, you kind of hit the nail on the head too. When you talked about location, like location is such a driver. You know, they want to be here because their data tells them that this is the place they need to be. And there's just not any options for it.
Yeah. And I think part of what comes with that is a whole lot of analysis that the company is doing behind the scenes. I think you kind of mentioned that, but that includes, where is their customer base? Where is their inland port? How are they getting goods in from there? How quickly do they want to be able to ship to their customers? And all those are a big factor. Yeah, I could put a warehouse up in the middle of North Dakota and save a lot of money on square footage, but that doesn't solve the problem that my customers are looking. So if I'm in a hotbed, which is probably where I want to be, well, I think that the price per square footage of real estate there in the warehouse space is probably high as well, because everybody wants to go there. So now, is your sweet spot kind of bigger type companies with multiple DCs? And I know you're not necessarily just warehousing, but you're also in the industrial space. Or are you kind of more of the smaller mid-market type thing? Like, where do you fall in the market for the type of customer that reaches out to you?
We have better success with medium and smaller size companies that are a little bit more willing to accept Class B real estate and compromises in the market. I think it's a cliche, but the bigger the fish, the more likely they are to not compromise at all. They want the same distribution building in Dallas and Denver and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and they don't need to necessarily compromise on column spacing or loading or anything else, or, they'll just build to suit. And so that's not necessarily a universal truth, but we have had more success dealing with owner-occupied buildings, people that are hustling and putting their own money into buildings rather than dealing with corporate bureaucracy to make these decisions where it's just throw money at a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense to me. Now, once a company makes a decision to do this, and I think it is a very viable decision to make. I think it alleviates them of a lot of pain and headache of things that you've already described, and that is a big factor. What happens after that? So what does the nuts and bolts look like when you go to a site, when you do this? Is there like a lengthy inspection process that happens as part of this? Is there a lot of red tape? What are the sort of legal things that come into play when I do a big project of this nature to make a physical change to my building?
So Rob, maybe you start with your end, and then I'll pick up on the more technical side.
So it's not necessarily different than any other construction or renovation project. You're going to need to get municipal approvals to do things. The building permit process, it sounds exotic. It sounds crazy. You're lifting the roof of a building, you're making it taller. But in general, it's not necessarily harder to do this than it is to add on to a building. In fact, it's usually easier to get a building permit for lifting the roof because you're not adding to the square footage of the building. You're not triggering a review of parking. You're not triggering typically zoning requirements. These are typically easier permits to obtain than some of the other things that go through zoning and entitlement processes. And so architects usually find these are easier permits to obtain. And then as far as structurally and the structural permit process, I think Matt can address that better than I can.
Yeah, to just piggyback off that too, when it's a warehouse becoming a warehouse, once again, that's always more straightforward. Sometimes when you're converting the use of the building, there might be a little bit more that you have to go through, but for these it's a warehouse now, it's going to be a warehouse. It's usually very simple. So when our clients decide that they're interested in doing this, Rob will visit the site generally first, kind of as like a preemptive, just information gathering, depending on what kind of information that they have for the building. And then if it takes a more serious step, that's really when I get involved. And I'll come out and do more of a detailed inspection, verify that what we have on the building is correct, and come back and sit with our engineers and figure out a plan of attack. Okay, how are we actually going to do this? Where is the steel going to go? How is it going to be configured? Sit with the construction team and say, what's my phasing going to be? What's my pre-construction timeline, my on-site construction timeline? We put that whole package together in a due diligence report for ownership, and that gets presented along with a design build price. We do this design build. We don't do the engineering and then the construction. We wrap it all together because it gives you the benefit of our field experience in doing this since, like I mentioned, first one in the 80s. Right?
Yeah. When the customers come to you, do they are they doing this ahead of time? Are they leaving you enough time, or are they coming to you with a sense of urgency type thing where I need this project now, I'm out of space now? What do you normally see? Are people pretty good about being proactive about this or no?
Some are good, a lot aren't. It's like anything else. You get all types. Some need it yesterday, and some clients surprise us and are paying us to do engineering for things that they're going to do next year, which is a real pleasure. So, it's a mixed bag.
It's funny.
Do you have flexibility? I mean, can you respond to either, or is there a chance where you just tell the client, like, I can't do it in that timeline, that's unsafe, or it's reckless? Or
Matt's not a magician, so there are certainly things that we try and do to accommodate requests, but it's always within reason. When somebody calls and says, I want to move quickly on a project, we usually make every attempt to make that possible if it's real, but that has to be confined within realistic timeframes. And these things take time. Even when somebody says that, and they're ready to write a check day one today, you're 3 months away, 4 months away from being on site by the time you get through engineering and permits and contracts and things like that. And sometimes my job is just educating somebody about what it's going to take to get through that. And some people understand that pretty well, and some people are totally surprised by that. And so that has a spectrum of understanding as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would come into play a lot.
Yeah.
Very rarely are people that you deal with have a construction type background. I would say they're usually running a business, or they're running an operation, they're running a warehouse. And so they're totally dependent on you, I think, to kind of guide them and set the expectations of what's realistic and what's not. They just know that they're looking for a solution, and you're the provider to provide that solution.
And a lot of times there's an intermediary where, when it's a real estate transaction, sometimes you're dealing with a real estate broker first, or a real estate professional who is doing everything in their power to make a deal happen. And so, they're trying to grease the skids to get their commission through. So, everybody's trying to get to the right place, which is an occupied building with a happy tenant, or an owner-occupied building. But getting the right timelines and everybody educated on how long this is going to take sometimes is an exercise in managing expectations, because everybody has different understandings of what that's going to be. And even if everybody understands, sometimes people just say, can you do it faster? Can you do it faster than, even if they understand, they hope you can do it faster.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they have to understand you've got your staff, you've got your equipment, you've got your other jobs that you're managing. They're not your only customer, I think, that you're working at one time. So.
Yeah. And a big part of what I end up having to do too, we mentioned before that we can do this in occupied buildings, right? Is not only the expectations of, like Rob said, the contracts and the engineering and the pre-construction stuff, but then the coordination of when we're doing this in an occupied building, how that phasing is going to go, how our crew is going to interact with the warehouse team, how they're going to systematically vacate certain areas. There's a lot of phasing involved with that. So managing those expectations becomes one of my challenges too.
Yeah. Are you nationwide, or are you regional? Like what's kind of your bread and butter for your geography?
Yeah, right.
It's nationwide. We'll go everywhere. It certainly has clustered it in the Northeast. Number one, because that's where we're located, and number two, because that's where old buildings are that are tremendously valuable. And so I think we're always going to do better in the Northeast, just because it's going to always be easy to sell this in valuable old buildings, but we go everywhere.
There's such a sweet spot of like 25 to 35 foot base facing 14 to 20 foot clear, 20,000 to 120,000 square foot warehouses in this.
I see.
Right. And like that is like a bread and butter building for us because they're in the right locations. They're not typically these huge distribution centers, but they're perfect as last mile type buildings. Not to say that we don't do the distribution centers. We did 680,000 square feet. Was that Secaucus, Rob? Yes. So we've done that size before, but we tend to get more of the buildings that I just described. And there's such a quantity of them in this area.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense. Now, let me ask this question. When you come into a facility, if it's occupied or sometimes if it's not, on the on the ceiling of warehouses is almost always sprinkler lines, security cameras, IT, Wi-Fi equipment, Wi-Fi nodes. Are those any risk to this? I mean, how do you account for and accommodate those critical pieces of hardware that are on the current ceiling of facilities usually?
So when it comes to lifting the roof, there isn't a specific right answer for what has to happen with any of those things. You asked if there's a risk. There isn't a risk as far as lifting the roof goes. The lifting equipment, and Matt will speak to this, the lifting equipment is more than capable of lifting anything that's connected to the roof, so long as what's connected to the roof has been interrupted, extended, rerouted, etc. And so hypothetically, if there's a rooftop unit or a solar panel or anything that's connected to the roof, if there is a cable splice that's made so that there's extra loops of wire that can lift with the roof and that wire can pick up with the roof, that equipment, that rooftop unit, whatever's there could be connected and operational while the roof is lifting, hypothetically.
Oh, okay.
I'm not going to say that that's the right answer, but it's plausible and possible. The decisions about what should happen get made by the professionals who handle those things in concert with the owner of the building. And so if it's low voltage Cat 6 internet wire, a low voltage electrician might say, I don't want to deal with this roof lifting. Why don't I take it out of the roof during some downtime and run it alongside the walls so that I don't have to deal with this at all? And that might be the right answer, and that would be fine. And that would get it out of the roof lifting project entirely. That would be entirely appropriate. And that would be a way to solve the problem. Or loop wire, or do any number of other things to solve this problem. There isn't going to be one specific answer. There's just going to be how a bunch of professionals solve this problem. And the same is going to be true for lots of other things, including running cable outside, disconnecting it temporarily, coming up with a new way to route cable so that it's out of the area entirely. Who knows? There's, every project we learn something new because new contractors come up with new ways to do things to solve problems. And those are contractors that we are working in tandem with, not directing, because those are not our disciplines. We are just working alongside them, not, directing them.
Yeah. And I think that's the benefit of going with someone who, like, this is not necessarily a standard type procedure because you don't know what you're going to see until you get there. Fair statement. I mean, you don't know the age of the building, who set it up before you. So you kind of have to, you kind of have to pivot according to what you see. And that requires just expertise and experience. Yeah.
Not just that, like a lot of these buildings, nobody even knows what's up in the roof because usually there's been a tenant previously and like there might be a electrical cable and conduits that were feeding equipment that was there for the previous tenant. And because it wasn't hurting anybody, because nobody got rid of it because it wasn't bothering anyone. And so it becomes an exercise in abandoning and cutting that stuff back rather than extending every single wire. You wind up cleaning that stuff out and planning for the future, not extending every single piece of cable, because that's an exercise in futility. You start with where you're headed and, work backwards. What do we need once this warehouse is tall? And then work backwards from where you are to come up with what you need to do in this building going forward. Because you're exactly right. You have nobody has any idea what's up there. There's going to be low voltage wire that nobody has any clue what it's doing. But because the roof is going to go up, somebody's got to figure it out because it might be totally abandoned and sitting up there for the last 30 years, or it could be if somebody cuts that, the fire department shows up. So somebody's got to figure it out,
Yeah. I mean, so it sounds like not only do you get more space, more cubic volume inside your facility, but it's also a good opportunity to just clean your crap, like clean your crap up, get rid of all the old stuff and make it right, new,
Well,
safer, cleaner, the whole thing.
yeah, but that also costs
Good
money.
grief.
It's not all upside.
Yeah.
It does cost money to pay somebody to figure all that stuff out. So, you know,
Yeah.
that all comes
Yeah.
out in the wash.
Well, but I mean, it has to be, it's just a business now. I mean, you have to weigh that
Oh,
against
yeah,
what's going to cost you to do something else.
yeah,
And it may be way less, maybe a no brainer. It's so far underneath what I would have to pay if I go build another site at city, wherever,
yeah.
that type thing.
But these are unique problems. These are unique problems.
Yeah.
A ground up architect doesn't have to deal with what the hell is that wire, because all the wires are on their plans because they put them there.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to do some triage. You don't know
Correct.
what's wrong with the patient. I got to assess the patient before I can start doing my surgery type thing. Otherwise I could, I could do something wrong. So now, Matt, you said that a lot of sites that, not a lot, but you do have sites that you go to that are operating while you're doing this. And it looked like in some of the pictures I saw that at some point during the raising, there's an opening, that there's a possible gap there. I mean, how have sites secured that? How have they secured their inventory inside it? I mean, is there any type of risk that they have, or is that kind of all on them? And also, like weather, is there any risk that weather, rain, snow, wherever you are, that could get in there and harm the inventory if they are working? Obviously, they can tarp it, but what have you seen?
We have seen people try to tarp it. In our experience, it doesn't always work out as intended. Wind is a factor always. We haven't seen many security issues as far as that goes. Obviously, if you have higher priced inventory, you're going to take measures to protect it. One thing that we do offer as part of our suite of services are what we call a fast panel enclosure, where we have a partner we work with where they prefabricate the infill walls off site, and then they truck them in probably 12 foot by however high sections. And within a couple of days after the roof is up, and once the top of the remaining wall is ready to go, he sets them with a crane, boom, 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 right around.
Cool.
And it's really something that we push in occupied buildings for what you're talking about. And it's benefited a lot of our customers. And we design that. And then, like I said, it's manufactured off site and it's installed while our crews are working on a roof raise.
I'm going to add to this that in an occupied building that's got inventory, once the roof goes up, typically the sprinkler system is going to be disconnected for an interim temporary period. The moment the sprinkler system is disconnected, the municipality and the insurance company governing that inventory is going to require a fire watch. And the fire watch that's there is going to be doing double duty as security overnight anyway.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be an overnight security contingent in the building that's protecting the inventory anyway. And so it's kind of taken care of for that dual purpose anyway. That's what's protecting these spaces, is that they've got 24-hour security until they get their sprinkler system temped back. And by that point, the walls are in place because the fast panel enclosure is going to put it back together in, within a few days. And at that point, you've got a building that's weather tight, that's protected, and no longer, got a hole in the side of the building. So
yeah, I think
that combination is what.
Yeah, I would think that would make a customer feel much better. Hey, I got this gaping hole in my facility. I'm at risk with my inventory, but if there's a plan for it, which it sounds like there is, and it's something that gets executed a lot, then I think they should be able to rest pretty easy with that.
But to address weather, even a driving rain is going to get the inside of the building wet 10 or 15 feet. And when that happens, typically people are bringing their inventory away from the walls for that 10 or 15 feet and storing stuff that could get wet there and not their product. And so even though we're doing this in occupied buildings, even though we can advertise that, we can do this, there are certainly compromises made. They're not at 100% inventory. They're not without complete disruption. There are definitely things that are done from the warehouse user's perspective made to make it a little easier to accommodate if there's some incidental water that gets into the building. It's not bulletproof. It's still a disruption. It's still going to be impacted slightly by the fact that there are people torch cutting and welding, and there's a slight weather risk, and things like that do happen.
But I think you just know it going into it, and a solution can be had.
It's managing expectations,
Yeah. I mean, if I had to do that today in my facility, I could do wrap, move here, tarp. I mean, I don't think that would be.
And certainly tarping is much more appropriate. Instead of tarping the entire building, tarp inside the building, tarp electrical panels, tarp things that you can't get wet, that you can't move, and put up tarps to protect the pallet rack, the first level of pallet rack, so that they're not blowing in the wind, so that they're protecting, we've had a lot of success tarping, putting up a temporary wall inside the warehouse to keep a wet area and a dry area. That does a lot better.
Yep. Those are very effective. So how about this? I mean, what's the timeline? I mean, when you get in here to then you start working, I know it's probably building dependent, but what's a rule of thumb of how long a customer can expect for this to happen?
You or me, Matt?
So are we talking pre-construct, like overall timeline, or just time on site?
Time on site. Yeah, time on site.
So most projects are a 3-month timeline for the type of warehouses I talked about before, 20 to 100,000 square feet, plus or minus a few weeks. Once you start getting into the bigger DCs, and you're in multiple sections, you may end up doubling that and going to 6 months. And it depends on the level of how occupied it is too, right? If we're only 75% productive compared to normal, and it's not a complaint, it's just that's what the project's going to take, right? Coordination, we have to wait for certain inventory to be moved so we can access an area. It might take a little longer, but that's generally what we're looking at.
Yeah. I mean, I think you just have to bake it into the cake in your assessment or your analysis before you do this. But how high can you go? I mean, is there a limit to how high you can lift a roof, or how high are we talking here?
You're typically limited by economic factors before you are structural. There's also a saying that it's a Rob saying, so I'll give him credit, but
can't wait.
At a certain point, we're fixing used cars, right? Taking a used car, it's not working too well, and we're making it better. But at a certain point, it doesn't make sense to turn a Toyota into a Ferrari, just buy the Ferrari, and so it's usually driven by price more so than capability. The tallest one we've ever done was 45 feet. We took it to.
No, you went taller than that. You
what was taller?
150 feet tall.
Okay. 50 feet then.
20 to 50.
And I think each customer will have to do their own internal analysis too. I mean, the higher that you go, and Matt, you and I have talked about this, now you start getting into the world of, I need brand new forklifts that can get up to that level, new reach trucks and the whole thing. And that may not be something that I want to do. My current reach trucks that I have can go up to level 5. I'm only operating at level 3. So I'm okay with my current reach trucks. Yep. So that's maximum that I want to lift. I don't need to go up to the point where I'm running, racks that are 10 levels high. So, but I think that would depend on the customer and what their needs are.
I think a lot of this conversation was about occupied buildings and occupied warehouses. Another variable in play here is not necessarily what is technically possible or even economically possible. When there's pallet rack and inventory, who cares if Matt's capable of lifting a roof to 40 feet tall? If it means that Matt's got to manipulate a 40-foot tall column to do it, and there's no room to do that with the existing the merchandise and the product.
Yeah.
The right height might be to take a client from 18 feet to 28 feet, just because that's going to relieve the client and give them 2 more levels to store to without kicking them out of the building. And so that's another factor in subjectively assessing what the clients are capable of accommodating. Just like surgery, you don't always put, your 85-year-old grandma in for a knee replacement if she die in surgery.
Yeah.
Sometimes people aren't capable of handling what you're capable of doing to them. And so that is part of the negotiation here. Is just because we could do it doesn't mean it's going to work for the client. That's part of it.
And is there a pretty good exploratory phase that you have with the clients before you jump in to figure all this out? I mean, do you have that? What's your real problem? How long do you want me to solve this problem for? So know what to do.
We go to the buildings. We go to the buildings, and believe it or not, a lot of times part of my assessment is to dial people back and to say, I know this is what you want, but I'm going to give you a couple of different options and a couple of different choices, because my opinion might be, you might not be able to pay for what you want. You might not be able to accommodate what you want. You might not be able to endure it, And so I've been doing this for going on 20 years. I get a sense for they're going to have trouble for various reasons doing this. Sometimes people say, I don't know how high I want to go. Give me 2 heights. So sometimes we just bake that in, and I'll say, I'll give you a quote to 32, and I'll also throw in one for 36, because the additional height might not cost much more money. And sometimes I dial people back for the same reason. You want 36, but I don't think you could handle it based on what you're doing here. You're not going to be able to deal with all the steel and the forklifts and all the beams that are going to have to run through this warehouse. There's no place to do it. So, maybe less height. You'd love the height, but you can't empty this building out to make it possible. So we do that.
And all those I'm sure the customers or clients appreciate you letting them know about that ahead of time. Like, it really advises them. It's a very bad day when you lift a roof too high and then realize that you have to drop $500,000 on new reach trucks to get up to the new level. And
it never reaches that point, because they're aware of that kind of stuff well beforehand. Like there's usually very little surprises on that scale that are surprising people.
Sometimes we'll go kind of counterintuitive too. Like, you asked about where our max capabilities are, right? How high can we lift? And then as far as area goes, we can do up to sometimes 120,000 square feet in one shot. But sometimes it might make sense for the client. It's like, look, your building has a natural divide at 40,000 square feet. Let's vacate that, lift the 40,000 square feet, re-rack it, now move everything into that, and then we'll lift the other 40,000 square feet for you once that's empty. Sometimes that kind of phasing makes more sense for them.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Now, once you do a project and you leave, are you out of the picture there, or is there some type of lingering, like you leave people there in case there's leaks or you need to solve something like that? What does it look like post project, I guess?
So it looks like a normal warehouse, to be honest. If you don't know what you're looking at from a steel perspective, it doesn't look any different than any other warehouse that you've been in once they fill it up. We don't come back. The beauty is when we're done, just like from a typical construction standpoint, there is an inspector, a third party that comes in and looks at the welds and the bolts that we did. And once that's signed off and our engineer signs off, we're out of there. And hopefully we never have to see you again unless we do another one. So
nice for a new facility. Now, what about mezzes? What about mezzanines? I mean, is that something that, I know it's not necessarily lifting a roof or raising a roof on a facility, but it's a little bit in the same vein. Is mezzanine something that you have as a core competency too, something to offer? Because those are pretty popular as well, I would think.
Definitely. And it's not so much from the kit standpoint, mezzanines, that's not really our wheelhouse. But if you're looking for more of a structural mezzanine, you want to put racking on top of it, or you need a pretty heavy duty slab, heavy live load on top. You're going to use it for real storage and not just, cardboard boxes or a couple people walking around. Definitely us. And we've done that on plenty of projects. We did a project in Piscataway where we took the roof from 14 to 36 and we put a 13,000 square foot mezzanine in there. The tenant ended up being General Plumbing Supply.
Awesome.
Before your time, Matt, but another one in Patterson, full second floor.
Mm-hmm.
You did the whole mezzanine.
Yeah, beautiful. Cool. Well, where can people find out more about you? I mean, I've been to both your websites. Are you going to trade shows? I know online there's a LinkedIn presence, but where can people find you, and what do you got on the horizon for 2025 and beyond?
Yeah, Rob.
I go to a lot of real estate trade shows. I'll be out at NAIOP conferences in particular. ICSC, I go to the Recon show in particular. That's where I'll be soon. So,
and actually, Brian Vreeland from LIFTEX is at ProMat right now. What's going on?
Oh, nice.
So
nice.
We try to have a presence. Obviously, there's our websites. Rob's is rooflift.com. Ours is liftexusa.com. Both are very informative. I mean, Rob, you didn't really get a chance to talk much about your background. Maybe that would be a good time now.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a sales and marketing background, and I hooked up with my partner 17 years ago, and I guess he hired me because I had just enough of a math and engineering brain to straddle both worlds. Matt's world, where he talks about steel and beam sizes and engineering stuff that truthfully our clients don't seem to care about at all, because our clients ask me 100 questions about, what do I do with my sprinkler system? What do I do with the solar panels on the roof? What do I do with what kind of permit do I need? And so those are the problems that I help solve to bring LIFTEX business. And so I sort of sit in the owner's rep world, or sort of a little bit of the construction management world, to help LIFTEX get projects by solving some of those bigger picture problems for the LIFTEX projects. That's what I do.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, Matt, Rob, I really appreciate you coming on the Warehouse Underground podcast. It's a very, very cool thing that you do. Very interesting. And I think the more that people are aware that this is an option for them, I think the better off that they're going to be. I know there's many facilities out there that just, Matt and I talked about this. Hey, I didn't even know this was a thing, but now that it is, I'm very interested in it, because I think it's a great solution for me. And I know people that do it, that have a long track record and doing it for a long time, and a lot of references and so on and so forth. So very cool stuff, guys. I appreciate it again. And maybe we do another show sometime in the future. Yeah.
Sounds great. Thank you, Ben.
Awesome,
Thank
guys.
you for having
Thank
me.
you. You got it. Thank you again. All right, guys. Well, that concludes today's show. Thank you again to Matt and Rob for coming on. Again, very cool stuff that they do. If your facility could benefit from that, reach out to them. And I know there's a lot of places out there that would. So as the Warehouse Underground goes, please sign up for the community. Like I always say, lots of very, very cool content going on in the community. I think you guys are going to really like that. And with that, I will see you next time at the next podcast. Take care.